Well, folks, the time has finally arrived for us to be able to sit down and watch the newest MCU project, the next chapter of Phase 5, and also even the very first chapter under Marvel's brand new banner known as Spotlight, and that is, of course, the brand new 5-episode miniseries, which was titled Echo. And so we've seen so many trailers of the series, but now we actually get to sit down and see all the episodes and see all those scenes and see the context of those scenes. And if I'm going to be straight up with you folks, as someone who's a fan of Marvel and also someone who's a fan of the actual comics, not just the movies, but I've read hundreds of comics as well, maybe even thousands, I absolutely loved this show. I truly did. I thought this was a great start to the brand new banner of the Marvel Spotlight. I think this is a great step forward for Marvel. Now, don't get me wrong, this series was not perfect. It definitely had a few editing problems and even a little bit of... Actually, it's not so much that the editing was bad, it was more so the pacing of each episode. Not every episode, but some episodes. But we're going to jump into all that right now. So first and foremost, this series obviously stars Alaqua Cox, who portrays Echo, also known as Maya Lopez. Now, Maya Lopez is actually technically her real name. Echo is like her superhero name. And just to give a little bit of context, for anybody that does not read the comics, in the comics, Echo is very similar to Taskmaster, which means she sort of mimics people's moves. She has the ability to sort of fight the way that other people fight, which is why they call her Echo. She sort of echoes other people's moves and that type of thing, but in the series here, it actually is a little bit of a different take, and I actually really liked it. It's a little more supernatural, but not like to the point where it's straight up magic. Is actually basically she's echoing her past generations. She's able to sort of do some of these moves that her previous ancestors have done, and so she sort of is more like her culture and her origins, and this I believe they call it Chata tribe, is basically echoing through all the generations, including her mom, including her grandmother, and now of course herself. And I absolutely loved that idea, loved that element of the show. I thought, wow, it's very different, but still very grounded. It doesn't go as far as, her being like Doctor Strange. It's like, I would say it was kind of like a weaker version of Iron Fist. Now, that doesn't mean she won't eventually learn to develop this and become as strong as the Iron Fist, but I just mean it's not as magical or fantastical as what something like Iron Fist would be, and I think that was a good thing, because it was able to keep Maya still very grounded. You still felt like you're just at a street level hero slash anti-hero, because she's not really a hero. This is very much a story about Maya going back to her origins, trying to figure out who is she. She just spent her entire life being raised by a mob boss like Kingpin, who actually kills her father, which is not a huge spoiler. We already seen that in Hawkeye. So, she lost her father. We get to see what happens to her mother. We see how she ends up losing her leg, becoming an amputee. I think that this is one of the things that Marvel has hit, perfectly, really hit the nail on the head with this one. Not only do we not look at Maya as someone who's disabled and deaf, but rather than those things being her weaknesses, it's actually her strength, and she actually learns how to utilize these things, especially her deafness. There's one fighting sequence in the series where she just rips through a bunch of people. It's actually a part of it you've seen on the trailer when she's fighting at the roller skating, at that like sort of rec center, or this, this roller skating arena or stadium, and she ends up utilizing her deafness because she ends up turning music on extremely loud to the point where it hurts her opponents and hurts their ears, and she just rips right through them. And it was so cool to see that. I really loved how they played into that. So it was never that she was weak, it was actually that she was strong. Rather than making her seem like she had a disadvantage, it actually gives her an advantage. So I really like that. I really think that it was appropriate that Marvel actually hired somebody and cast somebody who was legitimately an amputee, and also someone who's legitimately deaf. I'm pretty sure Alaqua Cox really does, only have one leg, or at least, she is an amputee, and I know for sure she is deaf, but I'm pretty sure she actually is an amputee as well. But so that really elevates the character, because not only you're not just watching a show, you're watching someone like Alakwa Cox who really feels this way. Now, obviously, she doesn't actually have a superpower. Obviously, she doesn't actually go around fighting crime. I'm not saying that, but you get what I'm saying. She don't need to pretend to know what it's deaf. She don't need to act. She doesn't need to pretend to know how it feels to be an amputee, because she really has those qualities. And so, really, she's actually becoming Echo. So there's only a few little parts I think that she would have to actually act. Now, in terms of the supporting cast, there's a ton of great characters in here. You got Bonnie, Henry, Chula, Scully, Biscuits, all of which were absolutely fantastic characters. Really good side characters, really good supporting cast, secondary characters. A couple of them felt, they give you enough where you absolutely love these characters, but sometimes it feels like you wish you had a little bit more. Like, I wish I had a little more Bonnie, a little more Biscuits, a little more Scully and Chula. Well, actually, I think they utilized Scully and Chula pretty good, but and even Henry too. The character that I felt like should have been in the series more but wasn't was actually Bonnie. I feel like she's hardly even in the series. She's always there, sort of like in the background, but she's never really a focus, which is kind of sad because, her and Maya are cousins, but they're very much like sisters, really. I'm sure lots of us have that cousin that we look up to, or look at as someone. They're more like a sibling than a cousin. In this case, Echo or Maya, it's her and her cousin Bonnie, and I just feel like Bonnie should have been in there a little bit more. And so that is one really small nitpick that I would say, which I sort of already mentioned about the pacing, is that there were times when I was watching certain scenes and I could tell that it was cut out or edited down. And not just me, you'll notice it too. And and there were times when I feel like there should have been scenes that were extended or at least had like another part to it. Like, maybe not, maybe the scene, it could have been a different scene, but I feel like there was times when there were scenes removed, or like I said, there were scenes that were cut down. So the pacing was a little bit, off sometimes, but I will say that, considering the amount that they cut out of this series, because there were supposed to be, like, I can't remember, 6 or 8 episodes to this originally. So given how much they actually took out, I do think the editing is good. I think the editors did the best that they could with what they were given. But they still, sometimes you could feel that there were scenes that were missing. There were times when you could feel like, it was almost like, cut and paste. Is like, okay, well, for this scene we need this to happen, and now in the very next scene we need this to happen, in the very next scene we need this to happen as well. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciated what we got with how much was taken out, but you can sometimes feel that it was taken out. But beyond that, like, in terms of the character Echo, in terms of all the supporting cast, and even the villains for that matter, even Wilson Fisk, he's not in every single episode, but I feel like his presence is always felt. And but I think the strongest part about this series was how much they utilized the culture of Maya's background with the Chata tribe, or the Chata Nation, and they really utilized that culture, and it really was the culture itself really felt like that was the world that you were in. It was kind of like the foundation. So it's not, they don't go into it heavy to the point where it is not like annoying. It's actually very appropriate, and I loved every scene. At least for the first 3 episodes, they would start each episode with a flashback, but you learn as time goes on, as the episodes go on, that each of these flashbacks in each episode is actually moving ahead to a different generation. So in the first episode, you see, literally the series opens with the very first original member of the Chata tribe, and you see their origin, not just Maya's origin, but also the tribe and that Chata community and that culture. You see the origin of of all those generations. And then in the second episode, you see, another origin of a new character, but she's in a different generation. And in the third episode, it's the same thing. It's a little later down the timeline, but still, before Maya. And then, of course, that leads into Maya's grandmother, which goes to Maya's mother, which then, of course, goes to Maya or herself. And I just really liked those scenes, especially in the finale. She does sort of end up rocking out her own suit, sort of like a superhero suit, but the way that they gave her the suit, the way that this superhero suit comes true, and also the way that they revealed the suit, I thought was spot on. There's probably no one yet in the MCU that they revealed as good as this, and I'm not saying that as in she has the best, necessarily the best suit in the whole, in all of MCU. I'm not saying that you're going to love this suit more than anything. I just mean how they first introduce her wearing and donning her suit, I thought was very appropriate, and was probably one of the best introductions to any superhero suit when you first see them wearing their attire. I do think that Echo really hit the nail on the head with that one. This does give me a lot of hope for a future, like, Daredevil Born Again. This gives me a lot of hope for these darker, grittier, very well-grounded, but also very violent, heroes. Punisher, Jessica Jones. I'm sure eventually we'll get Luke Cage and Iron Fist back. Maybe not necessarily the same actors, but I do think that the Defenders are coming back. Gives me a lot of hope for Blade, maybe even Ghost Rider. So, it shows... this series is not perfect by no means, but I do think it was a good step forward. Daredevil is only in one single episode, which is literally the first episode, and just seeing two of them fight each other, I really like how they handled Daredevil. He was very dominant in the fight, which I would believe. I would think that most likely Daredevil would be able to probably take her on, at least that early in the stage. She hasn't really, come to fruition of her full powers. She hasn't really, tapped into her ancestral, generational powers. So when they fight, she's still really not much more than someone who's just a really good martial artist. And of course, Daredevil is a really good martial artist as well. But when they fight, he's already Daredevil. And so I do think that they handled that fight very well. They kept it, for the most part, very even, but I think Daredevil would have beat her and would have overcome her. And they give us, like, little hints and little teases of that. And how they used Daredevil, I thought, was very appropriate. Just enough to make you hyped, just enough to get you excited, but not enough to take away from Maya. And so I really appreciated that as well. And so all in all, I absolutely really enjoyed Echo. If I had to put a number on it, I would give it a 75%, I think. I would have went a little higher, but like I said, there were times you could feel the editing, you could feel the pacing, but I do think that the series did the best that it could with what it was given. So anyways, folks, that's my review of Echo. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.